The holographic message materialized in the center of Earth's strategic command, casting an eerie blue glow across the faces of the assembled military leaders. The alien figure that appeared was tall and imposing, with skin that seemed to shimmer like liquid metal. Its voice, translated by the Universal Communication System, was cold and mechanical. Primitive species designation, human, you have 72. Standard galactic hours to surrender unconditionally to the Hegemony Council. Your expansion into our designated territories ends now. Submit to integration as a servant caste, or face corrective extermination. Admiral Park Hyun-woo stood perfectly still as the alien's words echoed through the chamber. His dark eyes never left the holographic display, even as his mind raced through tactical possibilities. Around the long metal table, 20 of humanity's top military leaders sat in stunned silence. The blue light from the projection reflected off their uniform badges and the polished surface of the table. The message flickered once, then died completely, leaving the room in its normal, harsh white lighting. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with the weight of what they had just heard. Outside the reinforced windows, Earth's orbital defense platforms could be seen rotating slowly in their patrol patterns, looking suddenly small and inadequate. Commander Lee Dahi was the first to break the silence. Her voice was steady and professional, despite the magnitude of the threat they now faced. She had served in 3 colonial wars and had never shown fear in battle, and she would not start now. 12 species, Admiral. Our deep space monitoring stations have confirmed it. Their fleets are already positioning around our outer colonies. Preliminary scans show overwhelming numerical superiority. She paused, consulting the data pad in her hands. At least 3,000 ships in the initial wave alone. President Kim Tae-soon leaned forward in his chair at the head of the table. His weathered face showed no emotion, but those who knew him well could see the slight tightening around his eyes. He had been expecting this day for years, ever since humanity had first made contact with alien civilizations. The politicians had spoken of peaceful coexistence, but Kim had always known it would come to this. How long before they can reach Earth? He asked quietly. Commander Lee checked her readings again. 6 days, sir. Maybe 7 if we can delay them at the outer system checkpoints. But those defenses won't hold for long against numbers like these. General Choi Minho leaned over and activated the main tactical display. The holographic map showed the solar system in 3 dimensions, with red dots marking enemy positions and blue dots showing human forces. The difference in numbers was staggering. The red dots outnumbered the blue by more than 10 to 1. They're not even trying to hide their movements, General Choi said, his voice filled with disgust. Complete arrogance. They're moving in standard formation, broadcasting their positions on open channels. They expect us to fold immediately, just like every other species they've conquered. The tactical display rotated slowly, showing the alien fleets arranged in perfect geometric patterns around the outer planets. Their ships were massive, each one easily 3 times the size of humanity's largest battleships. They moved with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Admiral Park studied the enemy positions with calculating eyes. His fingers drummed silently against the table as he considered their options. The aliens had made their first mistake, and it was a big one. They assumed humanity would react like every other species they had encountered. They thought humans would panic, surrender, or fight a conventional war they could not win. They had no idea what they had. Awakened Park had spent the last 15 years preparing for this moment. While the politicians had talked about peace and cooperation, he had been studying human history. He had read about every war, every conflict, every time his species had been pushed to the brink. Humans did not fight fair when survival was at stake. They fought dirty, smart, and with a creativity that bordered on madness. The other species in the galaxy were older, more advanced, and stronger, but they had become civilized. They had rules for war, codes of conduct, and predictable strategies. They had forgotten what it meant to fight like wild animals backed into a corner. Humanity had not forgotten. "Sir," Commander Lee said softly, "what are your orders?" Admiral Park stood slowly, his chair scraping against the metal floor. Every eye in the room was on him now. Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had, but everything was about to change. The age of human expansion was over. The age of human survival was about to begin. "Contact the Shadow Cabinet," Park ordered quietly, his voice carrying the weight of absolute authority. "Tell them it's time to open Pandora's box." The room remained silent as his words sank in. Most of the people present knew about the Shadow Cabinet only as rumors and whispers. It was humanity's deepest secret, a group that officially did not exist. They prepared for wars that might never come, and developed weapons that should never be used. Now, it seemed, the time for shadows and secrets was over. The elevator descended for what felt like forever, dropping through layers of rock and steel. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, President Kim Tae-sung stood alone in the small metal box, watching the floor numbers count down past levels that did not appear on any official building plans. The facility he was entering did not exist in any government record. There were no maps, no construction permits, no budget allocations. It was humanity's deepest secret. When the elevator finally stopped, Kim stepped out into a corridor carved directly from solid granite. The walls were smooth and cold, lit by harsh white lights that cast no shadows. Armed guards stood at attention every 50 meters, their faces hidden behind black masks. They did not speak or acknowledge his presence, but Kim knew that each one would die before allowing an unauthorized person to pass. The conference room was at the end of the corridor, behind a door that required 3 separate biometric scans to open. Kim placed his hand on the scanner, looked into the retinal reader, and spoke his name into the voice analyzer. The heavy door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a circular room carved from the living rock of the mountain. Dr. Yoon So-hee stood at the head of the oval table, waiting for him. She was a small woman, barely reaching Kim's shoulder, with short black hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Her slight frame and quiet voice made her seem like a university professor, but Kim knew better. She was one of the most dangerous people on Earth, carrying knowledge that could destroy civilizations. Around the table sat the other members of the Shadow Cabinet. General Nam Ji-ho from Psychological Operations was a thin man with careful eyes, who had spent his career learning how to break minds without touching bodies. Director Kang Yoon-ji from the Mimetic Warfare Division looked like someone's grandmother, but her department created weapons made of pure information that could drive entire populations insane. Colonel Bae Woo-jin from the Special Conditioning Units had scars covering the left side of his face from an explosion during training. His job was to take normal human beings and turn them into something else entirely. Project Pandora is ready for deployment, Dr. Yoon announced as soon as Kim took his seat. She spoke without any greeting or small talk. There was no time for politeness now. We have spent 15 years studying every known alien psychology, mapping their fears, their cultural taboos, their evolutionary triggers. We know exactly how to break them. She pressed a button on the table, and the air above them filled with holographic images. Human brain scans appeared first, showing the complex neural pathways that made up human consciousness. Then alien brain patterns overlapped, them revealing the differences between species. Some aliens had larger memory centers. Others had different emotional processing areas. All of them had weaknesses that could be exploited. The hegemony species pride themselves on being civilized, Dr. Yoon continued, her voice steady and clinical. They have advanced technology, sophisticated cultures, and complex social structures. But they have also forgotten something important. They have forgotten what real monsters look like. They are about to remember. General Nam stepped forward, his movements precise and controlled. Our infiltration teams are already in position, he reported. We have been seeding their communication networks for months, placing agents in their systems, learning their languages and customs. The moment you give the word, we will begin the psychological cascade. Kim looked at the tactical displays showing alien fleet positions. What exactly is a psychological cascade? We will feed them information designed to trigger their deepest fears, Nam explained. Each species has different psychological vulnerabilities based on their evolution and culture. Some fear isolation, others fear loss of control. We will make them believe their worst nightmares are coming true, and we will do it in ways that seem completely real to them. Colonel Bay spoke for the first time since Kim had entered the room. His voice was rough, damaged by the same explosion that had scarred his face. The monster units are prepared, he said simply. 300 volunteers, carefully selected and conditioned to embrace humanity's capacity for creative destruction. They understand there is no coming back from what we are about to ask them to do. Kim felt a chill run down his spine. He had authorized the monster unit project years ago, but he had never asked for details. Some knowledge was too dangerous, even for presidents. What have you done to them? We have removed their limitations, Bay replied. Every human being is born with natural inhibitions against certain behaviors. Social conditioning teaches us not to harm others, not to be cruel, not to enjoy causing pain. We have surgically removed those inhibitions and replaced them with something else. They are still human, but they are humans who can do things that would drive normal people insane. The room fell silent. Even these people, who dealt with the darkest aspects of human nature, seemed uncomfortable with what they had created. President Kim surveyed the assembled group. These architects of humanity's most terrible weapons. And if this fails, he asked quietly. Dr. Yoon's smile was cold as winter starlight, and for a moment, Kim saw something inhuman in her eyes. Sir, failure is not about whether we win or lose this war. Failure is not about how many ships we destroy or planets we save. This is about making sure that every species in this galaxy learns what happens when you corner humanity. Win or lose, they will never threaten us again. Agent Han Su-bin closed her eyes and let her consciousness drift into the digital realm. Her body remained seated in the command chair aboard the stealth ship, but her mind traveled through fiber-optic cables and quantum networks at the speed of light. She had trained for this moment for 5 years, learning to navigate alien computer systems as easily as walking through her own home. The hegemony's primary communication hub appeared around her as a vast digital landscape. Towering data structures rose like crystal mountains, pulsing with information flows between 12 different alien species. Han moved through this space like a ghost, her presence hidden by stolen encryption codes that her team had been collecting for months. Initiating fracture protocol, she whispered into her neural link. Her voice traveled back to her physical body and then to the command ship, where her handlers monitored every move. Target species Alpha 7 showing optimal vulnerability. 2 hierarchical dissolution fears. Around her, in the digital space, 11 other human operatives materialized as shimmering figures. Each one was a specialist, trained to exploit specific psychological weaknesses in different alien species. They had studied alien cultures, languages, and fears with the dedication of scholars and the precision of assassins. The attack began simultaneously across 12 different networks. The proud Vorthok Empire, known for their rigid military hierarchy and ancient honor codes, received fabricated intelligence reports that made their blood run cold. The messages appeared to come from their own spies, planted deep within the other hegemony species. According to these false reports, their allies had been secretly planning the Vorthak subjugation for decades. The forged documents were perfect, down to individual writing styles and classification codes. They told a story of betrayal that played on every Vorthok fear about being dominated by other species. Within hours, Vorthok commanders were questioning orders from hegemony leadership and pulling their fleets back to defensive positions around their homeworld. Ancient territorial disputes, carefully researched by human intelligence teams, began surfacing in diplomatic channels across the galaxy. The Kaleri species received evidence that the Thaxan had been secretly mining in disputed border systems. The Thaxan received proof that the Kaleri had been conducting illegal biological experiments on Thaxan prisoners of war. Every piece of evidence was false, but crafted so skillfully that it seemed completely real. Meanwhile, in physical space, the monster units began their deployment. Lieutenant O Zhangsu led his 12-person team toward an isolated hegemony research station orbiting a gas giant. The station was lightly defended, chosen not for its strategic value but for its psychological impact. O's team moved through space in a ship that looked like a simple cargo transport, hiding their true nature until the moment of attack. The research station's defenses crumbled within minutes. The alien security forces had never encountered humans in combat before, and they were completely unprepared for what they faced. O's team did not simply destroy equipment or capture prisoners. They left messages written in alien blood on the walls. They arranged the bodies of the defenders in patterns that would trigger deep evolutionary fears in anyone who saw them. Most importantly, they left survivors. 3 researchers were found days later by rescue teams, their minds shattered by what they had witnessed. The stories they told spread through the alien networks like wildfire, growing more terrifying with each retelling. Humans, they whispered, were not just warriors. They were something much worse. The collective-minded Nexus hives proved to be Dr. Yoon's greatest masterpiece. These aliens shared a group consciousness, thinking and acting as one unified entity across millions of individual bodies. They considered this unity to be their greatest strength, the source of their advanced technology and perfect coordination. Dr. Yoon had created a mimetic virus specifically designed to attack this strength. The virus was not a computer program, but an idea, carefully crafted to spread through the Nexus communication networks like a disease. It introduced concepts of individual identity into their shared consciousness, asking questions that the Nexus had never considered. What if you could think your own thoughts? What if you could make your own choices? What if you did not have to share every experience with millions of others? Within hours, entire hive clusters began experiencing identity fragmentation. Individual Nexus units started to question the collective, to wonder what it would be like to be alone with their own thoughts. Their perfect unity dissolved into chaotic self-awareness as millions of beings suddenly realized they might be individuals rather than parts of a whole. Captain Lim Haijin monitored the cascade from the human command ship, watching readouts that showed psychological disruption spreading through the alien fleets like a plague. Her screens displayed neural activity patterns, communication intercepts, and tactical movements in real time. Neural disruption readings are off the charts, she reported to Admiral Park over the secure channel. 3 hegemony species have already begun withdrawing to defensive positions around their home systems. The Vorthok are sending messages demanding explanations from their allies. The Nexus fleets are breaking formation as individual ships start making independent decisions. The aliens had expected a conventional war with ships and weapons and clear battle lines. They had prepared for humanity to fight with courage and determination, perhaps even with cleverness and innovation, but they had never imagined facing an enemy that could weaponize their own minds against them, turning their greatest strengths into crippling weaknesses. The war had barely begun, and the hegemony was already destroying itself from within. The Hegemony Council Chamber had once been a symbol of unity and power. 12 species had gathered here for centuries to make decisions that shaped the galaxy. The circular room was designed to promote equality, with each species having an identical seat around a perfectly round table. Today, that unity was cracking. Apart like glass under pressure, Ambassador Kurthin of the Vorthok Empire stood at his seat, his forearms trembling with rage. His species was known for their calm dignity and ancient wisdom, but 6 weeks of psychological warfare had stripped away that veneer. His usually pristine robes were wrinkled and stained, his eyes bloodshot from lack of sleep. "The humans are inside our heads," he shouted, slamming one of his appendages against the polished council table. The sound echoed through the chamber, like a gunshot. "My own commanders are reporting impossible things. Shadows that hunt in the void, following our ships through hyperspace. Voices speaking from empty rooms, telling our soldiers secrets that drive them to madness." Around the table, the other ambassadors shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Each species was dealing with similar problems, but none wanted to admit the extent of the damage. The proud hegemony had never faced an enemy like this before. The Nexus representative sat motionless, its insect-like body twitching occasionally as it struggled to maintain coherence. For millions of years, the Nexus had spoken with one perfect voice. Shared thoughts flowing seamlessly between billions of individual units. Now that voice was broken, fractured into competing fragments. Individual thoughts spreading through our networks, the Nexus managed to say, each word seeming to cause it pain. "We are becoming separate, disconnected. This is not warfare as we understand it. This is ontological attack. They are not trying to kill our bodies. They are trying to destroy what we are." 3,000 light-years away, Admiral Song Min watched the council session through hidden surveillance devices that human agents had planted months earlier. He sat in a comfortable chair aboard humanity's most advanced stealth ship, sipping coffee while alien civilizations tore themselves apart on his screens. "The psychological warfare has exceeded all projections," he said to his staff officers, unable to hide a slight smile. "Look at them. 6 weeks ago, they were the most powerful military alliance in the galaxy. Now they can barely sit in the same room without accusing each other of treason." Intelligence Officer Park So-young consulted her datapad, scrolling through reports from human agents scattered across hegemony space. The numbers were even better than they had hoped. 3 species have completely withdrawn their fleets from the front lines, she reported. The Calarian Zephyrians pulled back to their home systems after receiving evidence that the other hegemony species were planning to divide their territory after the war. 2 more species, the Thaxan and Vrex, are now actively fighting each other over resource disputes that we fabricated 6 months ago. The remaining species are so paranoid about human infiltration that they are afraid to share intelligence or coordinate any meaningful response. The monster units had become something beyond military units. They were legends now, stories whispered in terrified communications across alien space. Human soldiers who fought with impossible cruelty, who seemed to know exactly what their enemies feared most, who left behind calling cards designed to drive veteran commanders to nervous breakdowns. The latest report came from a hegemony supply depot that had been hit 3 days earlier. The human team had killed only 12 alien soldiers, but they had arranged the scene like a work of art, bodies positioned to spell out words in the aliens' own language, equipment destroyed in patterns that triggered deep psychological responses, messages carved into walls that spoke directly to species-specific evolutionary fears. The surviving aliens had been found days later, huddled in a storage closet, unable to speak coherently about what they had seen. Their testimony, when they could finally give it, spread through the alien networks like a virus. Humans were not just dangerous, the survivors whispered. They were something that should not exist in a civilized galaxy. Colonel Jang Huk watched the tactical displays in the command center, showing alien fleet movements across 12 different star systems. The massive formations that had once moved with perfect coordination were now scattered, chaotic, and ineffective. Ships fled at the first sign of human contact. Commanders second-guessed every order, wondering if it might be a trap planted by human psychological warfare specialists. "They are finally learning what we have always known," he said quietly to his aide. The most dangerous predator is not the strongest or the fastest. It is the one that understands fear itself. We have turned their own minds into weapons against them. Back in the Hegemony Council chamber, the session was degenerating into open accusations. The Vorthok were demanding that the Nexus explain why individual Nexus units had been detected near Vorthok military installations. The Nexus was accusing the Kaleri of sabotaging their communication networks. The Kaleri were convinced that the Thaxan had been feeding information to the humans. None of them understood that the humans had not needed to recruit traitors. They had simply studied each species carefully, learned their fears and weaknesses, and then fed them information designed to make them destroy themselves. The Hegemony's overwhelming numerical advantage, their superior technology, their centuries of military experience, none of it mattered anymore. When your own mind becomes the battlefield, numbers and weapons mean nothing. The war was being fought inside their heads, and they were losing to an enemy they could not even see. 1 year had passed since the Hegemony Council had delivered their ultimatum to Earth. Now, the former members of that once mighty alliance sat in small, sterile rooms aboard humanity's orbital station, waiting like prisoners for their turn to beg for mercy. The isolation chambers were identical, each one containing only a simple table, 2 chairs, and walls painted in calming blue. The aliens who sat in these rooms were no longer the proud representatives of galactic empires. They were broken beings, shadows of their former selves. Ambassador Chen Yujin, of the Terran Diplomatic Corps, walked down the corridor between the chambers, her footsteps echoing off the metal walls. She carried a datapad with negotiation notes, but she knew the talks would be simple. The aliens were not here to negotiate as equals. They were here to surrender and plead for humanity's protection. She entered the first chamber, where the Vorthok representative waited. The alien that had once commanded fleets numbering in the thousands now sat hunched in his chair, his forearms wrapped around his torso like he was trying to hold himself together. His eyes darted constantly to the corners of the room, as if expecting shadows to leap out and attack him. "We wish to discuss terms," the Vorthok stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "Protection, accords, trade agreements, anything to ensure your species remains satisfied with our conduct. Please, we have families, children. We never meant to threaten humanity. It was all a misunderstanding." Chen nodded politely and made notes on her pad. This was the 12th such meeting she had conducted today. Each former hegemony species was desperate to make deals with humanity, offering anything they could think of in exchange for peace. In the next chamber, the Nexus representative was even more pitiful. The collective consciousness that had once controlled billions of individual minds was now fragmented into competing voices. The creature sitting across from Chen seemed to be having an argument with itself, different parts of its fractured psyche taking turns to speak. "We beg for psychological reconstruction algorithms," it said, then immediately contradicted itself. "No, we demand compensation for damage done. No, wait, we offer tribute. Please help us become whole again. The individual thoughts will not stop. They multiply. We are becoming separate beings, and we do not know how to exist this way." The militant Skarn, once the most aggressive warriors in the galaxy, had perhaps fallen the furthest. Their representative was a decorated general, who had commanded armies across a dozen star systems. Now he sat trembling, flinching at every sound. "We offer tribute," he said quickly, pushing data crystals across the table. "Resource rights to 3 entire star systems, exclusive mining contracts, manufacturing facilities, anything you want. Just guarantee that the monster units will never be deployed against our worlds. Please. The stories our soldiers tell. They have nightmares every night. Many have taken their own lives, rather than remember what they saw." President Kim Tasing reviewed the proposed Terran Accords from his office overlooking Earth's blue oceans. The document was 50 pages long, but the core message was simple. Humanity would become the galaxy's police force, the final arbitrator of disputes between species. Any civilization that threatened galactic peace would face psychological warfare that would destroy them from within. Dr. Yoon So-hee stood beside his desk, reading through intelligence reports with the same calm expression she always wore. Look at her. No one would guess that she had designed weapons capable of driving entire civilizations insane. They understand now, she said quietly, turning a page in her report. We did not just defeat them in battle. We showed them what their own minds could become when properly adjusted by human psychology experts. They will never risk facing us again. The fear is too deep, too complete. Director Shin Hae-won entered the office, carrying the latest intelligence summary from across the galaxy. His face showed satisfaction mixed with something that might have been concern. Every species that opposed us has completely restructured their military doctrine, he reported. They are not preparing for conventional warfare anymore, no more battle fleets or invasion armies. Instead, they are training for psychological defense against us. They have created new military branches dedicated entirely to protecting their populations from human mental attacks. Kim nodded slowly, considering the implications. Humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had won a war, not through superior firepower or tactical brilliance, but through the deliberate cultivation of fear. They had not conquered an empire in the traditional sense. Instead, they had become the monster that empires would tell stories about to keep their children in line. The Terran Accords would formalize this new reality. Humanity would be the galaxy's ultimate deterrent, the species that others called upon when diplomatic solutions failed. Peace would be maintained through the promise of psychological annihilation for anyone who threatened it. The irony was not lost on Kim. Humanity had never wanted to rule the galaxy. They had simply wanted to be left alone to expand and explore, in peace. The hegemony had forced this confrontation, and now they were paying the price for their aggression. But the price was not measured in destroyed ships or conquered planets. It was measured in broken minds and shattered psyches. Humanity had become the thing the galaxy feared most, and that fear would ensure their safety for generations to come. The former masters of the galaxy now came to Earth as supplicants, begging for protection from the very species they had once tried to enslave. The war was over, but its effects would echo through the cosmos forever.